The day James came to find me, I was crouched in an alley, washing dishes. It was the dead of winter. My hands were soaked in ice-cold water, swollen, red and numb, yet I kept scrubbing mechanically, repeating the same motion over and over again. 1 cent per dish. If I finished this whole tub, I could afford a piece of bread from the 7-Eleven. A single piece of bread was my only meal for the day. Just as the red basin was about to be emptied, I heard someone call my name. It was James Anderson. Dressed in a tailored suit, he stood in stark contrast to the filth of the alley. I froze, my hands stiff in the freezing water. I stared in disbelief as his tall figure came closer, but there was no sense of relief, no feeling of being saved from my suffering. Instead, it felt like a lifetime had passed since we last met. Time to come home. He stood before me, looking down from above. I didn't move. I just stared at him, and in the reflection of his eyes, I saw myself, wrapped in a tattered cotton jacket, hair unkempt, face gaunt and weary. There was a stark contrast between us. Seeing that I wasn't responding, James grew impatient and reached out to pull me up. I flinched, my hand slipping, and a porcelain plate tumbled from my grasp. The moment it shattered, my body reacted before my mind could catch up. I curled up on the ground, clutching my head, and frantically begged for mercy. 3 years of beatings had conditioned me to react this way. Just the mere thought of a fist landing on my body sent uncontrollable shivers down my spine. Tears and snot streamed down my face as I choked out desperate pleas. Don't hit me. I was wrong. I was wrong. I won't do it again. James stiffened. Chloe, who are you putting on this act for? You were only abroad for 3 years. His voice carried anger as if he was certain I was pretending. If this were in the past, I would have panicked at his misunderstanding and desperately tried to explain myself. But now, I could say nothing except for those same broken pleas. Terror had hollowed me out. I was so afraid that I collapsed onto the ground, frantically trying to piece the shattered porcelain back together. My hands trembled as I worked in haste. The jagged edges soon sliced into my already swollen fingertips, fresh blood seeping out and mixing with the murky water. But I felt nothing. All I could think about was avoiding a beating. Breaking a plate meant more than just pain. It meant I wouldn't get paid. No money meant no bread. No bread meant another night of hunger. The cold, the hunger, the pain. I had endured them too many times over the past 3 years. Even just thinking about it now made my stomach clench with fear. I had no recollection of how James took me away. Even when I was seated on the plane heading back home, my body still trembled uncontrollably. People around us were staring. Their expressions varied. After all, in the pristine luxury of the first-class cabin, my tattered, beggar-like clothing was a jarring sight. Even the blanket draped over my shoulders looked far more valuable than I did. Even the flight attendant, as she approached with a tray, couldn't hide the trace of pity in her eyes. Miss, would you like a cup of hot coffee? The rich aroma stirred my senses. I lifted my head, my gaze landing on her warm, friendly smile. Almost instinctively, I reached out, only to have my hands fully exposed to the light. Red, swollen, covered in frostbite. Gone was the delicate, smooth skin from 3 years ago. My fingers were rough and cracked, my hands withered like aged bark. The flight attendant gasped in shock. I flinched instinctively, quickly pulling my hands back and curling into my seat, shaking my head frantically. No, I don't want it. I don't want it. The air around us grew heavier. In the end, the flight attendant still placed the coffee on the tray in front of me. Before leaving, she shot James a conflicted glance and muttered under her breath, "Looks decent enough, but it turns out he's just a heartless SC** bag." James was speechless. I paid no attention to her words. My focus remained solely on the steaming cup of coffee, my throat constricting as I swallowed hard. In the past 3 years, even a single cup of water had been a luxury. Countless times, I had been forced to chew on cold, rock-hard bread, swallowing it dry with nothing but my own saliva. If you want to drink it, just drink it. It's instant coffee, not some rare delicacy. James's voice was laced with disdain. His sharp gaze studied me, his features as refined and composed as ever, but his words cut straight to the bone. Chloe, it's only been 3 years. How did you turn into such a pathetic mess? Pathetic? Could dignity fill an empty stomach? I thought. I wanted to say something, but my throat was too tight. The man sitting beside me was the very reason I had ended up like this, yet I didn't dare utter a single word of blame, not because I still loved him, but because I was utterly terrified. 3 years ago, he abandoned me on the streets of a foreign country. No passport, no money. That very night, I was almost trafficked to a red light district. I barely escaped. With no identity, I had crawled through the cracks of society like a rat hiding in the sewers. I had worked as a garbage collector. I also scrubbed sewage tanks and cleaned glass on high-rise buildings. At my hungriest, I had even barked like a dog on the streets just to amuse passers-by in exchange for a few coins. During that time, my only dream was to go home. I swore to myself, if I ever got back, I would never love James again. So now, of course, I wouldn't dare to offend him. I never wanted to return to that dark place again. The mere thought of it made me tremble all over. Yes, I'm pathetic, I whispered in agreement. Even as I stared at the coffee, all I could do was lick my dry, cracked lips. I didn't dare to take it, cowering like a well-trained dog. But James didn't look pleased with my obedience. His expression darkened even further. In his eyes, there was something unfamiliar, an emotion I couldn't decipher. I didn't understand. And even if I did, I wouldn't dare to acknowledge it. As soon as we landed, James didn't take me home. Instead, he took me to a hospital. In the psychiatric ward, I stiffened at the entrance, my gaze shifting to James in horror. My voice trembled, on the verge of breaking. James, I swear I don't love you anymore. I just want to go home. Please, don't send me to a mental hospital. I didn't dare to struggle. All I could do was clutch his sleeve, pleading softly. James seemed to hear the fear in my voice. He slowly pried my fingers off, then flipped his grip to clasp my wrist instead. When he grabbed my wrist, he seemed momentarily uncomfortable, perhaps due to how bony it felt. But the hesitation lasted only a second before he firmly shoved me into the consultation room. Inside, a man in a white coat stood waiting. Thin-rimmed gold glasses framed his face, and something about him felt familiar. When he saw me, his eyes lit up behind his lenses. His voice was gentle, reassuring. "Ms. Lewis, long time no see." I froze, surprised that he knew me. But before I could react, James threw me onto the examination table. Being so thin, the impact sent pain shooting through my bones. But I didn't dare to make a sound. Over the past 3 years, the most important lesson I had learned was to endure beatings in silence. Once they got tired of hitting me, they would eventually stop. "Run some tests on her. I think there's something wrong with her brain." I heard James coldly speak to the doctor. Then both men turned to look at me. Their gazes were scrutinizing, assessing. I instinctively curled in on myself. I wanted to protest that there was nothing wrong with my mind. If anything, my body needed a real examination. I was hurting, so badly, but I didn't dare to speak up. So, I cooperated with the kind-looking doctor, answering the questions he asked, though there were many I couldn't answer. Still, he was gentle. Whenever I hesitated, he simply wrote the correct answer down for me. So, the diagnosis was that there was nothing wrong with my mind. I let out a breath of relief, thinking that this meant James had no reason to lock me in a psychiatric hospital and would finally take me home. But I never expected that the moment the doctor and I stepped out of the consultation room to deliver the results, James looked even angrier.